Hello friends, in the part 2 lecture on the Constitution of India in the series which we are doing on the making of contemporary India from 1950 to 1990s today, where we talked about, in the first part we talked about the Constitution of India, that how Constitution of India has some kind of a legal sanctity and how that sanctity has to be maintained in the framework of the laws which are to be framed over a period of time. And I also referred to certain readings which you can talk about when you are talking about Constitution: Bipin Chandra's India Since Independence, Ramchandra Guha's India After Gandhi, D.D. Basu's Introduction to the Constitution of India, apart from Granville Austin's The Indian Constitution. So these are some of the readings. B.L. Grover, An Introduction to Modern India, where you will find about the kind of background which is there. So all these kinds of things you can see in the framework of the issues which are associated with the Constitution of India. And when we talk about the kind of various kinds of ideas with regard to the Constitution of India, we find that the idea of nation building was very, very important, and how nation has to be built, and Constitution in the political framework was very, very important. Apart from that, the other social indicators, cultural indicators, they also played an important role in the framework of the nation building, as India was a very young nation. So the issues of unemployment, poverty, all of them, they were there, and how the poverty, unemployment, underdevelopment, these aspects, they had to be undertaken, they had to be seen, and they had to create some kind of a democratic political structure which could look after all these kinds of aspects, and democratic and civil libertarian society had to be created. And we also find that when you talk about the Constitution and how some of the features of the Constitution, they are seen to be the basic structure of the Constitution. And Supreme Court in 1973 in a judgment in Keshavananda Bharati case talked about the basic features of the Constitution, and D.D. Basu, who has been a constitutional expert, and he says that the judgment on the Keshavananda Bharati case, it laid down that there are certain basic features of the Constitution of India and which cannot be altered in exercise of the power to amend it. So one has to keep in mind that Constitution of India has certain basic features, and if any kind of an amendment which has to be brought in, then it cannot in a way try to negate the basic features of the Constitution. And some of the people, those who are associated with the Constitution, like Justice S.M. Sikri, he has tried to see the basic features in the framework of the supremacy of the Constitution, the republican and the democratic form of the government, the secular character of Constitution, the separation of powers between the legislature, executive and judiciary, and the federal structure of the Constitution. So these are some of the important features which are seen to be the basic features of the Constitution, and how any law which tries to negate all these features cannot be accepted. And other features, if you want to see, then free and fair elections, they have to be undertaken. And D.D. Basu, he has tried to communicate that how the objectives which are specified in the preamble, judicial review, freedom and dignity of individual, unity and integrity of the nation, principle of equality, concept of social and economic justice, balance between fundamental rights and directive principles, independence of judiciary, and effective access to justice. So experts like Basu, they have tried to brought in so many important aspects which are there in our Constitution, and preamble, which contains the ideals and aspirations of the individuals, has been given a lot of importance, because preamble is the one which talks about the enacting clause we the people of India give to ourselves. So we are the one who are giving this Constitution to ourselves, and judicial review is an important consideration, where judiciary has this kind of a right to see those laws which are against the basic features of the Constitution, and how individual dignity which is there, which is given to the individuals in the framework of the fundamental rights. When your fundamental rights are violated, then one can go to the court to the High Court and the Supreme Court to seek any kind of remedy. The right to constitutional remedies given in the Article 32 of the Constitution gives an individual this kind of a right. And we also talk in the framework of social and economic justice when you talk about the directive principles of the state policy. And judiciary has to be seen in the framework of independence, where you have this kind of balance of power, how the balance of power, the idea which was propounded by Montesquieu, and this separation of powers and the balance of power, where all the wings of various wings of judiciary, legislature and executive, they are able to balance each other, and everyone shall have this kind of a right where they have this where they can be given justice. And we also find that in 42nd Amendment in 1976 that it declared that there shall be no limitation on the amending powers of the Parliament, and no Constitution Amendment Act could be called in question in any court on any ground. But this amendment, which was brought in 1976 during the emergency, it was amended, it was in a way negated by the Supreme Court in the Minerva Mills versus Union of India. And the doctrine of the applicability of the basic structure, it held that the judicial review is a basic feature which cannot be taken away by amending the Constitution as well. And in the present times we find that judiciary has this kind of a right when it finds that if any law is not in consonance with the Constitution, then that law will not apply. This is what the judiciary can do. And D.D. Basu has argued that how the substantive limitation which was founded on the doctrine of basic feature has been introduced into Constitution by judicial innovation. So how courts, they have played an important role in the Indian Constitution, in the sense that they have been able to safeguard the important features which are associated with the Indian Constitution. And when we talk about the ideals and aspirations of the Indian Constitution, that how these ideals and aspirations in the framework of India being a sovereign, socialist, secular and democratic republic, they are enshrined in the preamble of India. And the objective of the preamble is that it states that the people of India in the Constituent Assembly, they made a solemn resolve to secure to all citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. So the ideas which are there in the preamble, they also reflect the ideals and aspirations of the people, that what kind of a society people look for themselves. And all these terms which are being used in the preamble, they have a very specific meaning, that how they want to provide justice to the people, and this justice is social, economic and political, that one should not feel that complete justice has not been given to an individual, and the individual should have every kind of liberty, and this liberty he has to express in his or her own daily life. And at the same time, when you talk about the preamble, you talk about that how the idea of fraternity, where the dignity of the individual and the unity of the nation has been talked about. It also talks about the equality of the status and of opportunity, and the way the people, they have to be given that they are equal, they have this kind of a status where they are seen to be equal, and law considers them to be equal, and no distinction on any basis will be made where the people, they will be discriminated against each other. So though there might be certain restrictions at different points of time, but these restrictions are only temporary in nature, or they have a certain value. They can connect to the security and the security of the nation. They might relate to the public morals, but they are a different matter. But in normal situation, these rights are available for everyone. And when you talk about preamble, then we find that the priority is given to the concept of justice as compared to liberty, equality, fraternity, and to social and economic as compared to political justice. All of it was very deliberate in nature. because when one is able to attain justice, then it will lead to some sort of a holistic development. And when you talk about that how this justice was to be achieved, then this justice will be some sort of a complete justice. The social and economic justice is as important as the political justice. And we find that scholars like Subhash Kashyap, he says that the order of words, they indicate that the concept of social and economic justice was perhaps considered the most fundamental norm of Constitution of India. So constitutional experts are also in a way trying to convey that the concept of social and economic justice was one of the important or the most fundamental of the idea which was there in the Constitution of India, because when people will be able to secure their social and economic justice, then they will come at par, then they will, everyone will be equal in that sense. So it will be very it will be some sort of an important or the most important aspect of the Constitution of India. Apart from that, we also find that various kinds of other fundamental rights which have been given to the individuals, and these rights are the individual rights. They are enforceable, they are limitation on the state's power, they are not absolute because certain restrictions are there. And W.H. Morris Jones, he says that not only represented the advanced democratic thought, but also a convenient way of setting at rest the fears of minorities. So we find that how the fundamental rights which we have received through the Constitution of India, right to equality, right to freedom of religion, right to freedom, and in which there are in the right to freedom we have been given various other rights apart from where we talk about the right to freedom of religion, how we want to practice our faith, and at the same time any kind of exploitation is not to be right against exploitation. We talk about the constitutional remedies. So all such kind of rights which have been given as the fundamental rights to all of us are very important in the framework that they are enforceable in the court of law. Individuals can seek redressal if their fundamental rights are violated, and high courts and the Supreme Court, they have this kind of authority where writ petitions can be filed with regard to the rights of the individuals. And at the same time they try to restrict the power of the state, that many a times that state may become too dominant and the rights of the individuals, they may be infringed. So the individuals can seek the redressal of their rights through the right to constitutional remedies where they can approach the courts. And we also find that the fundamental rights when they were in a way given to the Indians, then British, they had claimed that these kind of rights, they were there so as to protect the minorities. Otherwise these minorities would have been suppressed by the majority. So that kind of an incorrect claim which the British made in terms of staying on in India was totally a false claim. And Patel, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he talks about that how we have to prove that it was some sort of a bogus claim, it was a wrong claim, it was a false claim, and that nobody can be more interested than us in India in the protection of our minorities. Our mission is to satisfy every one of them. So Sardar Patel talks about that how Indians they have to play an important role in terms of the idea or in a way in terms of negating the British claim, and how Indians have to play an important role in the protection of the minorities, and how the minorities, everyone of the minorities, they have to be satisfied. And when we talk about the various kinds of rights, as I told you earlier as well, the right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to property, right to constitutional remedies were initially there in the Constitution, and thereafter right to property was in a way taken away, and now it is no longer a fundamental right in that sense. And how the cultural and the educational rights are also very important, that how from the social and economic and cultural point of view, how the various educational institutions, they can have some kind of a reservation for their own minority, and minority institutions are given these kinds of rights. where they can practice some kind of a reservation for their own community. So this will in a way will try to provide them some kind of an opportunity where they can be educated. And we also find that these fundamental rights, how they were very, very important, that any kind of action by the state when it was arbitrary in nature, that had to be negated. And the protection against other private citizens, that any private citizen, if when it was against the state in some way, or if it was against the institution in some way, so the individual can seek that kind of an action against that private citizen by in a way suggesting that these are his or her fundamental rights. And how Article 17, it abolishes the untouchability as a practice which was there in India, how it was being abolished by the Article 17. And Article 15(2), all of them are the parts of the fundamental rights. They convey that no citizen shall suffer any disability in the use of shops, restaurant, wells, roads and other public places on account of his religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. So all these rights in a way, for example Article 23, which is prohibiting the forced labor, all these rights are giving some kind of an assurance to the people of India that how the state cannot violate their rights, and they can seek remedy whenever their rights they will be violated. So fundamental rights in that sense, they are enforceable in nature, and on the other hand there are other injunctions in that sense. Directive principles of the state policy is one important contribution which is there in that sense, that how it has been incorporated in the Constitution of India, and they are not enforceable in that sense, but at the same time they are seen to be the positive obligations of the state. And the kind of ideas which are there in the directive principles, they are to be incorporated in the various kinds of laws, and they in a way talk about the social and other kinds of in a way justice to the individuals. So the principles which are in a way associated with the directive principles of the state policy, where the Article 38 tries to convey that the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social and economic and political shall inform all institutions of national life. So directive principles of state policy, where you will find that these are to be incorporated by the various governments, because if the governments will not try to incorporate the directive principles of the state policy which are talking about the welfare of the people, then they may suffer in their elections. They may not be able to secure votes in the elections, because directive principles of the state policy many a times are a lot of welfare measures. They also talk about the adequate means of livelihood, citizens adequate means of livelihood, equitable distribution of the material resources, and the concentration of wealth and means of production is avoided. So these kinds of ideas, where you are talking about a society which is more equitable in nature, and the material resources are being distributed in an equitable manner, and how any kind of concentration of wealth is to be avoided, that there should not be any kind of concentration of wealth or the means of production, so that some kind of a parity could be achieved in the workplace, and not only for the people those who are part of that workplace, but for everybody. And it is also talking about that how the health of the workers, children and the pregnant women is to be protected, and equal pay for equal work is to be given to everybody. So there should not be any kind of discrimination on the basis of sex, whether it is a man or a woman, then everyone should get equal pay for equal work. Then some kind of idea which was there with regard to the people those who were associated with the drafting of the Constitution, that they wanted to provide all sorts of thrust to the education sector, and how the compulsory primary education to the children should be given till the age of 14 years. It was being anticipated at that point of time, and the idea of common civil code was also talked about at that point of time, that how the common civil code will be beneficial for every section of society, though there is a lot of debate with regard to that common civil code may not will not be applicable, shall not be applicable on everyone that way, and the personal laws are more important, but that is a different kind of a debate. But when we talk about the directive principles of the state policy, it talks about common civil code for everyone. Then in the context of other areas, the directive principles, they also talk about the village panchayats and how they can improve the educational and other interests of all the sections of the society, that how the different sections of the society, they will be benefited when all these kinds of things they will be implemented. And it also talks about the wildlife and the environment, that how in the times in which we are living, where environmental degradation is taking place, where we have so many problems with regard to environment, where floods etc. are becoming more and more recurrent. So there should be a lot of focus, and the wildlife is in a way dwindling. So all sorts of laws which can be made to prevent the to safeguard the environment, to safeguard the forest areas and the wildlife of the country, they should be in a way enacted so that we are able to safeguard the environment. And it also talks about the international peace and security, and how we have to in a way maintain good relations with our neighbors, and we have to in a way inculcate respect for the international law and the treaty obligations, and any kind of we have to encourage the settlement of the international disputes by arbitration. So all these kinds of things, they are being talked about in the directive principles. And when we try to compare both the fundamental rights and the directive principles, so the important Supreme Court judgments and amendments, they continue to redefine the relationship between the individual rights and the social good. And all these kinds of amendments and the court judgments, they try to strike some kind of a balance between the fundamental rights and the directive principles, and how the new generation, they have to in a way reconcile with both of them, and how they have to in a way individual freedom is to be preserved while promoting the public good. And some of the other important ideas which are there in the Constitution are also in the context of secularism and socialism, which were being added in the 42nd Amendment in 1976. And there is a lot of debate with regard to the meaning of secular in India, and from the Western context, when we talk about from where the term secular has been borrowed, so it has a very different kind of a connotation. But when you talk about in India, because in the Western sphere we will talk about the kind of struggle which was there between the state and the church, and how church was able to decide on the religious issues, and state was talking about the other matters which were the secular matters. And we also see that when you talk about the fundamental rights, they also talk about the right to freedom of religion. They also talk about the freedom of conscience, where you can freely propagate, practice and profess one's own religion, and there should not be any kind of a discrimination on the grounds of religion. So fundamental rights, they also talk about the issue where one is free in terms of deciding one's own religion, and how we see that various religious establishment, they are able to maintain their own finances and their own setups, because these kind of rights, they have been given to them. Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, he in a way argued or communicated that we hold that no religion should be given preferential state of unique distinction. No group of citizens shall arrogate to itself rights and privileges that it denies to others. So Dr. Radhakrishnan also talks about that how all the citizens, they should have the similar kinds of rights and privileges, and others, they should not be given, they should not be, their rights, they should not be taken away, and no one should be discriminated. He further continues that no person should suffer any form of disability or discrimination because of his religion, but all alike should be free to share to the fullest degree in the common life. Secularism, as here defined, is in consonance or accordance with the ancient religious tradition of India. So, this is what Dr. Radhakrishnan talks about. And when you talk about the federal nature and the issue of federalism, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he explained that why the term Union of States was preferred over the Federation of States, and he conveys that the drafting committee wanted to make it clear that though India was to be a federation, that India was a federation in that sense, but a federation was not the result of an agreement by states to join in a federation, and that federation not being result of the agreement, no state had right to secede from it. Federation is a union because it is indestructible. So, India in that sense is a federation, but the states, they cannot secede from the kind of when they have become part of the Indian Federation, because this is indestructible in nature. And Dr. Ambedkar also talks about that though the country and the people, they may be divided into different states for the convenience of administration, country is one integral whole. Its people are single people living under a single imperium derived from a single source. So, Dr. Ambedkar also communicated this idea that this kind of a this kind of a division of states is there, but India has only one Indian citizenship, and any kind of conflict between the states and the center, they have to be minimized. So, when you see the unitary and the federal structure, we say that the Indian structure is quasi-federal in nature, and how states, they are being given all sorts of grants and financial financial kinds of grants by the center, and the power of the union is comparatively more when we see it from the financial point of view, and states are more dependent on the center in terms of attaining those kinds of finances. And when we tend to understand, then we find that the federal system can be understood also in the framework of the coexistence of the state governments with sharply divergent ideological complexions, that in India we have different kinds of state with their own ideological expressions, but at the same time all of them they function within the Indian Union. And to in a way complete or in a way retrospect or conclude our session, I would like to talk about the challenges, as we have done, the various kinds of initiatives to remove those challenges, the idea of nation building, where we talk about the optimism which is associated with that, the coming of the constitution, how democracy was talked about and how democratic aspirations were very, very important, how preamble which communicated the enactment clause and the enforcement clause, the fundamental rights and the directive principles, the debate within regard to the fundamental rights and the directive principles, and how the structure of the Indian constitution in the framework of the unitary or federal. So, with this I would like to end the discussion. Thank you.